Hello, and welcome to our next summer school lesson for grade 10 life sciences going into grade 11. Remember, in the summer school, we look at concepts that you've done in grade 10, which are important to remember going forward. So we're not revising all of the grade 10 work, we're only revising important concepts that you need to know. In the last lesson, we looked at cells, and we're going to move on from there. If we have a look at this, we looked at this last time. Any living organism is made up of different systems. Systems are made up of different organs, and organs are made up of different tissues, and of course tissues are made of cells. Now, we looked at cells in the last lesson, and we are now going to have a look at the tissues that you need to remember. Specifically, animal tissues. If we look at this picture, it's absolutely confusing because there are lots and lots of different pictures of different tissues, and they all look totally different. How on earth can we make sense of all of these different types of cells? First of all, you need to remember what is a tissue. A group of similar cells working together to perform a specific function. And the cells would all be specialized or differentiated, so their structure would make them very efficient at carrying out that particular function. And that is why all the tissues look different. Tissues can be divided into 4 basic types. There's connective tissue, which connects all the different parts of your body together. That keeps you together so you don't fall apart. Then we have epithelial tissue, which is the covering of our body for protection, and also the covering inside of things like lungs for absorption. Then there's muscle tissue, and its function is to move the different parts of our body relative to each other. The 4th type is nervous tissue, and its function is to send messages to coordinate what is happening in your body. We are going to have a quick look at each of these different basic types. First of all, epithelial tissues. This is basically your skin. It's a covering of your body, and it's for protection. That is, your skin covers your body, prevents your blood from leaking out of your body, and importantly, stops other substances from invading your body. If it's a covering of an organ inside your body, it's usually for absorption, for example, the lungs, the intestine. Now, because its function is protection, the cells are closely packed. There are no air spaces because air spaces would allow substances to get into your body or blood to leak out of your body. Where do we find them? Covering the body, as I talked about the skin, and then lining the body cavity. Now, depending on its specific function, we find different types of epithelial tissue. And what is important, the cells are different sizes, and there is a different number of layers. And the number of layers depends on, is its job protection, in which case you'd need many layers, or is its job absorption, in which case you would need few layers. We're looking now at the different types of epithelium. And the first group is the simple epithelia. Remember, epithelia is plural and epithelium is single. Simple epithelia have 1 layer only. So they're not much good at protection, but they're great for absorption. Then they differ in the shape of the cells. There's squamous epithelium with, here it is, flattened cells, function absorption, for example, the lungs. Second type, cube-shaped cells, cuboidal epithelium with the cube-shaped cells, and their function is also absorption, and they're found in the kidney. Then there's columnar epithelium, which has elongated cells. Now, they're still there for absorption, but because there's food in the intestine, they also need to give a little bit of protection, which is why the cell layer is a little bit thicker. That's why the cells are elongated. Now, interestingly enough, the surface of the cells can have cilia, which are little hairs to move substances, or they can have microvilli, which are there to increase the surface area for absorption, and that is what happens in the intestine. The other type of epithelium is the one that's mainly for protection, and that is stratified epithelium, and it has many layers of cells. The cells often have different shapes, and its important function is protection. That's why you need all of these layers of cells, and that is what our skin is like. Second type of tissue is muscle tissue. And muscle tissue's function is to contract to cause movement. Now, the contraction can either be voluntary, which means you decide you're going to get up and walk around, or involuntary. In other words, you don't need to think about it, your body will automatically do it. Now, all the different types of muscle cells are made of elongated fibers, and there are 3 different types. One is cardiac muscle, and in cardiac muscle, the elongated fibers are branched. Skeletal muscle, they're not branched, and that's found in basically the muscle that moves our body. And smooth muscle, that is what causes peristalsis, keeps your blood pressure up, things like that. We don't have to think about those. The one which you probably did the most detail of last year is striated muscle or skeletal muscle. And that's quite interesting because in skeletal muscle, many cells are joined together. So each fiber, there's one fiber, is made of many cells joined together so that they can work together efficiently. Okay, and they form long fibers. Another thing about striated muscle is they have stripes or striations, and you can see those as the lines. And they are very important when it comes to the muscles being able to contract. The third type of tissue is nervous tissue, and nervous tissue is made up of cells called neurons. And it's your neurons that are enabling you to listen to me, to see me, and to think about what I'm actually saying. Basically, the function of neurons is to transmit nerve impulses, because even thoughts involve transmission of nerve impulses. The structure, neurons have a cell body, that's this top part here, and it's got lots of little projections. And the projections are called dendrites. And there are lots of dendrites, and you can think of a neuron as a really skinny little guy who had an electric shock, so his hair is all standing up. Remember, skinny little guy with hair sticking out? That's exactly what a multipolar, which is one of the types of neurons, actually looks like. And all of these little projections are there to receive impulses from any other nerve cell. Then, once the neuron has received the nerve impulse, it's got to pass the nerve impulse along. And that is why it has a long projection called an axon, and that transmits the nerve impulses to other parts of your body or other parts of the brain. Now, because a nerve impulse is a tiny little piece of electricity, you know that you never touch a live electric wire. You'll get electrocuted. The electricity will go through you. So that's why most appliances, the electric cord is covered with an insulating layer of plastic. So the electricity only flows from the plug to the kettle and nowhere else. Well, exactly the same thing happens here in the neuron, because these things here in the neuron, that is an insulating layer called the myelin sheath. And what that does is it makes sure that the nerve impulse flows in the correct direction to the correct junction to the part of the body that it needs to go to. There are 3 different types of neurons, and they can be divided according to their structure, in other words, what they look like. The most common type of neuron is the multipolar neuron, multi meaning many, that's many projections, and you can see there, that's the cell body with its many projections. Most of them are dendrites, but one of them is a long axon to transmit the impulses. Second type of neuron is called bipolar, because it's got 2 projections, because bi means 2. And the third type is called a unipolar neuron, because it has 1 projection, that's it there, it has 1 projection, and the projection then splits into 2. And when you get to matric, you will learn more about what these different types of neurons do. At the moment, I think your neurons probably need a break.